time to Mission Starbase.
We are live.
All right. Nikolai has officially left his body, everybody. But he's spirit.
I love it. Oh, what's good, people watching now or in the future? Welcome. We are here with another exciting episode. So, Gail, would you like to introduce our guest for us?
Yes, we have my girl, Tawni Sands, in the house. Woo-hoo. So I will let her explain what she specializes in, but she is an incredible human being and healer and guide. And we do retreats together and we've worked together a lot. So I'm really excited to have her on the show. She's also one of my bestest friends. So Tawni, I'll let you introduce yourself to everyone and tell them what you do. You good, Tawni?
Oh, no.
Oh, I have a little bit of a technical issue here. So, yeah, she was wondering if her connection was going to be good. Let's see. All right. So, Savita, how are you today? How was your day while we get this figured out?
I worked all day. Nothing too exciting. How about your day? How was your day?
My day was good. My day is like already so overwhelming with all the energy that's coming in, all the downloads that are streaming in, you know, getting a lot of information.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Definitely some deja vu's going on. Tawni, can you hear us? It was just
maybe
working.
we should have her like leave and then come back on.
Yeah.
Try to leave and come back on. I know there's a lot of technical difficulties happening right now with all this crazy energy bouncing around. What retrograde do we have happening?
Oh God, I don't even know right now. I know that there was a Mercury retrograde recently, right? Is that still going?
That's over. This should be over.
It's been over, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's been over. I'm looking at the screen. It looks like Agent has literally like he's like a little light being there. Like
I love what the show turned into. Honestly, this is kind of funny.
We're laughing, you guys, because he did a water fast, and I think he's still doing a water fast. And I think he left his body, but he's right there with us. Let's see if we can get Tawni back on here, you guys. Man, we had a great podcast yesterday on Savita's channel. If anyone wasn't tuning in, you should go check that out.
Yeah. It was definitely a really good interview. It was very interactive and everybody was having fun and you had a lot of cool stuff to share. And I like that you were able to talk about the media on there because those premonitions are crazy.
Oh God.
Hello, yes. Can you hear us?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Where'd you go?
Like, what's happening? They're talking about something really great right now and I can't hear anything.
I know. We just started shooting the shit so we could kill time until you worked again.
I'm so glad. I'm so grateful to be here.
Oh, you can check tiles.
Oh, look at that.
I think that's new. I just figured, why not? Okay, let's do it.
All right. So anyway, I was introducing you, Tawni. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do.
Yes, awesome. Well, my name is Tawni Sands, and I'm a holistic practitioner. I mostly, what I focus on mostly with clients is resonance. And so I test them for what resonates with their body and what doesn't. So using applied kinesiology, you can test for strong or weak responses. And through that, you can identify a lot of things. I use a structure. In my mind, this metaphor of like a spider comes to me of, in a lot of ways, we are extensions of the creator, right? So in our wholeness, we have these different legs that assist us in our purpose here and being here. And the different legs that I test for are these priorities of structural, exercise and rest, nutritional, cleanse, emotional. I use Bach flower vibrational remedies for clearing emotionally inherited traits. I work with the chakras, the electrical body, a spiritual priority as far as belief and connecting to something greater than ourselves. And it's really interesting. A lot of people I work with, it really doesn't matter. What matters most is what resonates for people in whatever that connection is, whatever words they use. And then the last one is reactives, which is right and left brain integration. So through that, it's really fascinating what will come up for people. Everyone's so different and uniquely energetically made up. What I do is I help identify weaknesses and make them strong again. And it's really incredible to see how people shift, when we just like tune in and listen to what's going on, and how that can transpire for them and shift a lot of what's going on for them.
Yeah. Savita, have you ever had any experience with any work like this?
No, not personally yet. At least I don't
Ooh.
think so. So I'm curious, not to be too cliche, but just for my own sake of knowledge, what got you into these practices? Like, were these always topics that you were interested in, like from your whole life?
Well, growing up, I grew up in Christian Lutheran schooling, and I was always really curious about healing and the story of Jesus and what all that meant. And later in my life, I had some of my own health things come forward that doctors were just not, there was no answers. It was just like, try this, try that, try. And I was just tired of trying. Like, I wanted to know what the answers were. And I studied psychology. I was always really curious about just human behavior and like what makes people do what they do. And during trying to kind of figure out what was going on with my health, which it's been a really interesting journey, because there's a lot of things that have contributed to my experiences. Much like the weather, right? Like, we have all these different factors that come into play and then create our experience of something. So just kind of like peeling away the layers, my aunt first introduced me to a quantum doctor who like hooked me up to a machine, and I had to lay still for like 3 minutes, and he ran like all these different electrical impulses, and much like what I use with applied kinesiology, he tested for strong or weak electrical responses. And through that, a lot of what came up at that time in that session was really just addressing my diet and eliminating food allergies and intolerances. And that alone like made a huge shift in my life. And then coupled with studying psychology, I got my undergrad in psychology, and I had done an internship at the Neurodevelopment Institute at Azusa Pacific. And I was learning that, like, I was seeing all these factors come into play with running assessments with the kids in the community. And there was one story that like really stuck with me, that opened my eyes that this was not just like an issue with the child, like the parents had their parts in it as well. And anyways, it led me to reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And I was just like, this is more of like the psychology. Like, there was just a lot of things that resonated for me, that like the psychology that I was looking for. And then I was led to my spiritual psychology program. And during that time, it was like the first week of class, the professor had somebody come up on stage, and he was like, okay, I want you to say your name is John. and he had them put their arm out, and they said, "My name is John," and like he went weak because his name wasn't John. And then he had him state his name, and he was strong. And he gave this example of, well, that's what happens when you are in alignment and when you are in your truth. Like, you're strong. You don't have, there's no confliction of information. It's like, it's this knowing of this is what is true for me. And he went on to say that, like, doctors, he's like, how cool would that be, like, if doctors actually use this information? And anyways, since then I was like, that's what I want to do. And within 3 months, I met a woman whose grandmother like founded this practice that I ended up getting certified in, and here I am.
Yeah. Woo! And she's also just like an incredible light being and starseed and light worker, doing so many things. We actually have a group together called the Light Codes with a Z.
Ooh.
And yeah, we do sound baths and healings and, like, you know, shamanic work, all the good stuff that we do together. We go around doing that for people, and we do these retreats too. In Mount Shasta, her and I both have a retreat coming up in May in Mount Shasta, and we go out there, we do contact together, and we take people out there to see our star families too. So not only is she doing all the other stuff, she's also doing all this other fun stuff.
Oh my goodness, that's huge.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Oh,
welcome, Agent. Agent's back in the house.
Hey guys. Yeah,
hi.
keep going. Bring me up to speed.
Yeah. So Tawni was letting us know what she does, and
let me know what's going on.
Spiritual psychology she went through, and I do all these projects with her. So she's just out here doing incredible things. I know you have some questions for Tawni, since like we've never had a guest like her on the show before. So you guys have any questions for her?
Sav?
Go ahead. I asked the questions. Your turn.
Well,
welcome back.
To me, there seems to be a lot of psychological warfare going on today. And so I'm a channeler, and I just feel like most of like how I work subtly is just like channeling every day. Like I'm just channeling information, and then it's like kind of presented in the physical world to confirm it sometimes. And I was just getting to the point where I'm like, okay, so there's like, not to go, I don't know if we're going like too big with this conversation, but there's some kind of psychological war going on right now across the world. Like, it's kind of, I mean, I don't know where you guys stand, but to me, it's kind of undeniable. So,
well, yeah, it's very obvious.
Yeah, I can feel it. I can like hear it. You know,
yes.
I understand that it's going on, and I think that's kind of the division maybe many people are kind of in right now. Like, some people don't know what's going on, so they don't realize. But once you realize it, there's just this huge cognitive dissonance, and it kind of feels, it feels tough. So I understand why people don't want to go through that, but I don't want to go into the specifics, but I was just going to go into this whole, like, I think it's like the intelligence military community has gone rogue and is just now like running this. I don't know. There's like a financial aspect to it, and then there's like an intelligence aspect to it. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to make this a conversation about that.
Whole episode.
But I'm just getting these crazy downloads that, like, yeah, it's this, we're in this like weird psychological operation right now. So
yeah. So Tawni, what do you feel about that? What do you feel about this?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is that saying that everything is happening for us. And I think there's a lot of learning that's coming forward during this time and during these challenges that are really inviting people to understand these deeper things and to not be manipulated by the energy that's coming at them, right? That wants them to behave a certain way or to operate a certain way that's beneficial to these other people and not necessarily to them. That's just more of a one-way take.
Yeah, Tawny's always the voice of reason when it comes to like us being like super galactic and involved with like everything that's going on, and we're super hyper aware of everything. Tawny's always the grounding one that's like, okay, well, let's look at it like this from a neutral standpoint. And this is why, you know what I mean? She brings a lot of reasoning to the human part of how we're having this experience, which I think is really important because a lot of us star seeds are like always in our upper chakras and we're always super, you know, in tune with what's happening and hyper aware. But there's a real need, which Tawni is like, that her name is Tawni Sands. Like she's earth, like she's grounding. And I think she's like she's one of the beings that are really important to have with us here so that we can remember we're also human at the same time. We came here to be human, you know, our galactic self and our human body. So yeah, if you have any insights on what would help people right now, Tawni, with us becoming more and more aware of disclosure and everything that's happening and how it can cause a lot of anxiety for the star seeds, what you would suggest how to handle that, because I know we're all experiencing that.
Yeah, it's like what I first think of is obviously like identifying our own responsibility, right? Like what are we immediately have a responsibility to that we in our power can do something about. And then the second part is some of that divine feminine energy that's coming in and like in allowance and allowing people to be where they are for whatever reason they like are in these experiences, you know, to allow them to have those experiences. And I feel like there's a real surrender, right, to that's something greater that's always supporting us. It's like what got us here. I mean, it's like such a miracle that any of us are still here, that life is the way it is on Earth. Like it blows my mind to think about. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, I feel like a lot of our experience, I mean, some people might think this is selfish, but it comes back to us, right? Like our life is for us and how we choose to show up in the world. I feel like in some ways is like, that's where our power lies, in our choice and in our own karma, so to say. But yeah, would any of you add anything to that?
You are so precise with your words. There's a subtle, like there's no wasted language. It's just like such a clear, like you said, grounded. Like
that's why
you're like
literally in the name.
I'm getting like your soul is like so eternal, and it's just like a steady, like wow. You have really. Yeah.
No, she's very deliberate and very intentional with everything you're saying right now. And
what's the starseed origin? Have we gone into that? What's your background like? What's your past life?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. That's a great question.
You're like ancient.
Truthfully, like I really haven't gone seeking much into past life. Like I've had past life things actually come up through emotional processing, which has been really fascinating. One of the priorities I test for is emotional. So say somebody has high anxiety and they want to be anxiety free. I'll test them at what point in time their body last remembered being anxiety free, because there was something that happened that triggered, kind of this energetic switch. And so we go back to that time and we find out, well, like, what did this person make of this experience? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times too, even just revisiting it will shift that energy, because now we're seeing it from present time rather than something that like was in the past. But yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm not very familiar with a lot of like the starseed origins, but I'm very curious.
She's doing a lot of work on the ground for the Galactics right now.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I was just having some images in my head, like I kind of dozed off for a second, and I don't know if it was me just seeing a past life or something, but I just saw like this blue entity like just standing by the ocean with a binary star system behind it. I don't know. It just popped in my head.
Whatever you just said, I just got like chills up.
Oh God! It just popped in my head. I don't know. It was weird, but very beautiful. It was a beautiful scenery.
I definitely have seen some blue beings. Someone that's really been coming forward in my meditations is Krishna, which I find interesting as a blue being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Okay.
So Tawni, say somebody comes to you and because a lot of people probably do for anxiety, and you're testing for the anxiety, and you find out, you dive deeper into like, you find where the last point they were not that anxious was. What moving forward do you usually, I know it's like based on different clients for different situations, but what do you usually send them off to do, like as far as their homework and what they need to do to continue to stay healing in that path?
Yeah. So most of my sessions are usually a combo. There's very few sessions I have where it's like, this is the one thing that's contributing to this. But like, for example, anxiety. So a lot of the emotional processing, we just take care of in session, and in bringing that emotional body to the present moment. But for example, like there's a lot of food intolerances that can contribute to anxiety. So I'll give them a list of what those are. And we'll do the testing in session I have different food charts we test. And if they have candida overgrowth, like I identify that and give them a specific diet for a certain amount of time to clear out the candida, and then what diet they should switch to after that, like as far as what foods make them strong and what make them weak. I know for me, when I was younger, I would often eat and I would feel so tired afterwards, like I wanted to take a nap. And that definitely, shifting that and realizing what foods actually make me strong and give me energy has been a huge shift. And I feel like it can, like, just, there's so many things that are so simple, right, that we can do to really shift our energy and our field and not feeling like all these crazy things, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I really want her to come out with the starseed cleanse, you guys, and I think she's about to come out with that.
Yeah, we were talking about that because my name is Tawni Sands, and she's like, TS, like the starseed cleanse.
The starseed cleanse, like who would do that? I
would. Me too. Sign me up.
Are you familiar with like Dr. Sebi or Dr. I think it's Mercola?
Yeah.
Is it?
Both of them.
Yeah.
Dr. Sebi and then Dr. Mercola.
Yeah.
Dr. Mercola has been incredible. I've been following his stuff for like almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it lately, but he used to have this thing where he would have a list of, if you're taking these medications, like these are the supplements you need to take to balance out your deficiencies.
Yeah.
And I was living with my grandfather at the time when I was going through my master's degree program, and I like pulled out all his prescriptions and I paired them with all the supplements he recommended. And my grandpa's, like, his ankles were swollen, like at the time they were pretty big. Within a couple months they were back to normal, and he was doing really well.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what were the medicines or the vitamins that you would balance out with what, like, if you could give an example?
Oh gosh. For example, they were saying that, like, if you take a statin drug, which is typically for cholesterol, it's cholesterol or blood pressure, one of those, you should pair it with like a CoQ10 and like a B12.
Interesting.
So,
that's interesting. Yeah.
A lot of people with swollen feet typically are B12 deficient. But
So I know a lot of
B12
star seeds are vegan. Is B12 like, because I hear B12 is important for vegan people. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say to a degree. Like I like to use supplements for balancing. I don't like to take the same thing all the time, just like you wouldn't eat the same thing every day. But I've noticed that the more I'm on this path of health and healing, it's almost like the less my body needs as far as like to recover or to, it's like there's less depletion happening, if that makes sense.
Have we talked about fasting at all, or
No, not yet.
have you guys brought that up? Yeah, I mean, we talked about a couple of like weird kind of psychic spiritual experiences that have been coming up. I don't know if you can kind of like relate those two. I feel like there's something that I haven't really even gone into. Like my mind is more like quantum physics spiritual. So like the essence of existence, or the like the experience that we're having, like the rendering of like this reality. And I sort of understand like where those two meet. But it's interesting to think about like everything is spiritual, right? Everything is astral projected into this reality. So what does that mean for like nutrition? I've always kind of been really fascinated about like why this bodysuit, why this biological reproducing kind of like vehicle, like why is that the one of choice, the thing that is like of the earth kind of. It's such a weird, when you like break it down, the whole thing is like really really out there. Like why would spirit like pick these like weird kind of like earthy animal vessels that like die easily and like, you know,
Out of all things, yeah.
it's so weird. But anyway, yeah, I don't know where you go into that with like spirituality and like, I don't know if you think about that kind of stuff, but
I mean, yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Like balance,
I
right?
definitely,
Everything's
I think
balanced.
that's also in part too why I'm really drawn to like to studying the ascended masters, and like, you know, it's someone that's like really been coming through strong, and even like with Gail, I know this to be true, is Saint Germain. And like, it's like every day I have questions about like, well, how do they stay here? Like, for one, like, how do you stay here for that long?
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk about this for a second. Tawni and I,
Yeah, what's up?
we can talk about anything on this show, anything. So we're just gonna let everybody know that we actually encountered Saint Germain on the mountain in Mount Shasta in human form, in the physical
Yeah.
form. 1000% was him. We even captured it on video because he was allowing us to see him and capture this moment, and it was pretty fucking incredible. So after that, it was like our minds were just completely blown about these masters are still around, very much so, and only, you know, certain people can perceive them at certain moments in time when they're allowed to or supposed to, but they're very much still here. And how, like she's saying, like, wow, it's so fascinating how that is possible, and how like we're going through ascension ourselves right now, and how we are ascending our light bodies to be able to become ascended masters also. So it is so fascinating.
But I mean, I hear too your question of like, why did spirit pick this form, this reality, like these experiences? And I feel like too, that's like a really some personal questions, like for yourself, you know, to discover. And I know for me, I wouldn't have some of these experiences that I've had if I wasn't in this form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the senses. I feel like the senses really connect us to the reality.
But yeah, and what you were saying too about fasting, I mean, I've noticed that I get like huge, it's like my awareness on, especially in psychic abilities, like all of that like comes online so loud when I'm cleansing or when I'm fasting. And I've also have kind of had my own challenges with that of like, okay, like how do I stay present when I have all of this information coming in, and how can I like, what's the purpose of this? Like, what's the benefit? Like, how is this working for me? You know, and how can what do I need to change to, you know, because I think like when we open up these senses for some of the first times, it's like, it's just this incredible experience that we've never had in this body before. And so there's a lot of curiosity behind it. And I think that's like, at least for me, where a lot of the grounding comes in is like, okay, how is this useful? How do you know, like, what is?
Yeah, that's why I appreciate how grounded you are in this experience. I feel like you've become more of a master of grounding into this experience, and merging the third dimension and the fifth dimensional being together, because I know Agent has had a lot of downloads lately. I know I've had a lot of downloads lately. And I know that you used to have like tons of information coming in, so much like about the collective and really psychic, telepathic messages, that at some point I think you said that you kind of like you needed to put them away for a bit and just be human, because it was too overwhelming. So, what would you say to the star seeds out there that are having a lot of information come in and it's really overwhelming? Like, what is the best way to work with that?
I know that I've shared this with others, and it's okay to dial it down and to ask for the information that's coming in to be digestible, and I used to get like these premonitions that would show up like an image metaphor in my mind, and I would just start grieving. Like, I was crying, and I was scared in a lot of ways too, because I didn't know what was happening. Like, I thought something was going to happen to my family or my friends, and then it was like within 12 hours the event came forward that it was about, and I was like, oh. Yeah. But it also, having those experiences really opened me up to just understanding what was coming in, and what that was about. And for me now, if I get information that's coming in that I'm not really sure what my part in is, I just like send them light and send a prayer and a blessing to whoever's involved.
Definitely relatable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I-
Go ahead, Agent.
Go ahead. I don't know. I was, if Savita has something to say, I want to let her go, but.
Well, just because of what Tawni was saying with when you first encounter premonitions and they scare you, and especially when it involves your loved ones, oh my goodness. I'm curious for you, when you had your premonitions, if they were about, let's just say in theory, one of your parents, was it like something that was catastrophic, and then the next day would be something almost as if it was the same situation, but they never ended up dying? Or if it was just a metaphor towards like a conversation y'all ended up happening? I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but just to elaborate a little bit, I would see my boyfriend, for example, get into a car wreck constantly and actually be dead. And I actually saw myself go to his parents' house in mourning. And what happened later in the year was that he actually got into a car accident with me in the car, but we were A-okay. And what's funny is that the car that hit us and the girl was all in red, by the way. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Because y'all know about my red and blue dilemma. So I don't know if you've had something like that. You see someone die, but then it turns out to be something else. It's hard to process stuff like that,
Yeah, definitely. Well, kind of what I was referring to was more of like collective information. And it was like, my fear was that it involved family and those closest to me, which it didn't. For example, I had a huge, like, just overtaking premonition of when the Boston Marathon bombings happened. And I was like, the vision I had, I was above, like, overlooking the street, and there were body parts in the street. And it was very evident that people were killed. And so I think like that learning for me too was also like letting go of some of the details necessarily and being more in trust, and like just comes back to that piece of what am I, you know, what am I to do other than, I feel like a lot of my answers have been to be present, to not like buy into the fear, because a lot of times we don't know the specifics of the message that came forward that will be accurate until it's revealed. And
or also don't deny it. I feel like I realized that the other day. It was like, sometimes I had like irrational fears. We talked about something like, something like sticking in me. And in all my life, I was like, oh, that's not real. Like, just push that out, until finally I was like, what is that? So maybe, Savita, like, ask yourself, like, what is that? Or why is this coming to my attention? You know what I mean? Like, probe it a little more, investigate it, and it'll come to you. Like, use your intuition, obviously. Just channel it, like, just go into that thought. Like, so I wanted to suggest this thing about like the ego, or the subconscious mind, is kind of like attached more to like the animal experience that this whole species is having on this planet in this reality. And then our sort of conscious higher mind, or living consciously. And this goes back into fasting, just like doing things, like consciously eating, right? Like fasting is like deciding when I'm going to eat and when I'm not going to eat, rather than letting the body, the animal mind, determine when you're going to be hungry and when you're going to eat. So if we just shift our mind into this like more conscious, spiritual, whatever, that word is so weird, but like astral soul being, right? That's like, I'm going to consciously decide what I'm going to do in my life in every way. It's just like fasting seems to be like a part of that. It just seems to be like, one of those, like, I'm going to consciously decide when I, give someone my energy, or when I don't, or when I participate in this thing, or when I don't, you know what I mean? Anyway, that just seems to like kind of demystify the whole thing. But like, we're in this like kind of limbo between like physical, like more primitive animal consciousness, ego, and this kind of higher mind, the player that understands that it's in this like holographic, simulated, rendered reality. Yeah.
And it's the fun part is having them work together in harmony, right?
Yeah. balance that shit.
Yeah, it's like that saying, the mind is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, the ego comes in, and then it's like, okay, thank you for protecting me, but I need to keep moving in this direction of evolving consciousness, and that's not easy. That's not easy, because I think a lot of us are coming up with a lot of trauma right now, since we're being purged of all these energies and triggers. And then the ego comes in and it starts to react, right? And then we have to step back. And this is what Tawni's really good at, is, like really looking at the situation in a higher perspective and working through that with the ego involved.
Not reacting to the 3D and giving it the middle finger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the themes I've noticed with just in society in general, right, is one, like struggling with the addictive mind, and that sense of like instant gratification is like the extension of that. And
let's talk about that.
What's the game? What's the game here? I feel like it's all a game, right? It's all like a game of like, do you know what I mean? Like, what's the, like, how do you game pushing off your gamification? How do you game pushing off of your like your urges?
Addictions.
Yeah, how do you game that? Isn't that's interesting?
Literally, addiction.
How do you game your addiction?
I feel like the biggest thing that I encourage people to do is really focus on what it is that they desire to experience.
Yeah.
And because it's like the more we think of like, I don't want this thing, right? We're still thinking about that thing. And the addictive mind, I mean, it's definitely a certain part of the brain, right? And even with foods like fat, sugar, and salt all trigger that part of the brain. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing that these huge companies have been really profiting off of is that addiction of just one more chip, like just one more bite, and then your people are so full, right? They have like put way too much into their body that their body wanted.
But also, like, is it even the chip? It's like a vibration in the mind, you know? It's
Right.
like
What are they trying to fulfill?
it's a tingle.
Yeah.
It's
A
like
tingle.
do you know what I mean? It literally all boils down to like it's just like a little zip in your brain that's like, salt. Or just like, oh, that, you know, that feels good. Oh, that was, you know.
It's so funny thinking
Well, I
about
think
the
it's
mind.
like it's
like
So
that.
let's go into that.
It's
What is that?
stimulating. It's
Why would-
stimulating that part of the brain.
Yeah, it's all vibration. So what is it that, like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like your light being, your soul is having this human experience, and it's all just like, how is that vibration? Let's talk about that maybe. How is that vibration shared between what we would think of as our light being, our astral self, and the physical self? Why does, you know what I mean? Like, where is that? How does that vibration? This is really metaphysical, but like, how is that relationship actually brought into
How does it
union?
occur? Yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
matrix stuff.
I
you
mean,
know?
the question that comes to my mind is, what's the desire?
What's
the desire behind why we're doing what we're doing? It's really interesting. As I was listening to you too, I was having this idea of like it kind of seems like the addictive part of our brain isn't really necessary. Like it almost feels like it's like a second, like we at some point maybe we just developed it.
Maybe it's reptilian.
Or why is it there? Or why is
Why
it even
is it
there?
there?
Why is it there? Why do we get addicted?
Is it also the part of us that gives us that choice, right? To choose the higher way, or
what's the positive?
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
What is the positive? Just like you said, Tawni. What is the positive aspect of an addiction that keeps you like safe or protected? Right? Family,
right?
Friends.
What
it's
are you
like positive
with?
bonds.
Yeah.
It's bonds.
What I'm getting
it's
to
a negative bond.
is to not feel alone.
Sorry.
Oh no.
I'm excited. It's just a relationship. I get it. I'm slow.
Yeah.
I'm slow.
No, you're not. Don't say that. Come on.
Go ahead.
It's interesting. I feel like too there's like this huge theme of like aloneness. You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
well, this has been a conversation that we've all had. Yeah. So it's easy for a lot of
the feeling of aloneness.
Like, is it us running away from feeling alone?
I started to feel like when I started channeling, I was like, it was a this way energy instead of a this way energy, you know, like it was almost like I could turn my vortex the other way. So there might be something about that, you know, it just projecting my own experience. Like as soon as I started being like, oh, I have all this creative energy I can put into the world, I was like, I'm not interested in like the world, you know what I mean? Like I'm not interested in the feedback of like what the world gives me in that way as much. So,
you know, I think it's really interesting with people that have mastered these addictions, have mastered a lot about themselves, I feel like, in how to deal with the emotions that come up when you have the craving to, you know, whatever it is, disassociate. And I've seen like in some starseeds awakened people, you can go in a completely different direction because a lot of this is very hard to handle. Like it can go totally sideways for some people who take an addiction, like drug addicts who have, you know, like we'll go to Mount Shasta and, you know, I've been to Mount Shasta and seen, you know, drug addicts sitting there drawing sacred geometry like you've never seen before. And they're just so in tune and so awake, and they have so many incredible things to say, but they're addicted to a drug because they just cannot cope with the information coming in or whatever it is. So it's like it's always
too
like
much.
it's overwhelm, and it's the ability. I feel like this is the gift of the addictive tendencies, is to strengthen us in our ability to work with it. And
Make us
for me, it's
stronger.
sugar. Like if I could just get past this sugar addiction, I could be a fucking badass. But I'll have Tawni help me with that one.
Let's go.
Brownies are pretty freaking good. Those are my weakness.
I know.
Oh, warm brownies, man.
Sugar is so low vibrational too. It's probably why we're trying to ground. It's like emotionally trying to ground ourselves.
Yeah, but it tastes so good, and they make the candy all pretty and everything.
Let's talk about Tawni. How do you stay so grounded?
I drink a lot of water. I feel like that's like a big part of it. I don't know. I feel like I've just been on this path, and I don't know if it's also, I feel like I came here with grounding energies. I think there's this part of me that I've known about myself just in being here.
Just a knowing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely times in my life I've been ungrounded, no doubt. And I think that's all part of our lessons too, of learning more about ourselves spiritually and like in this vessel, and like what are we doing here? What is this all about?
Right.
I know after I had like really huge like spiritual awarenesses in just having like my own psychic abilities and all of just getting all this information coming in, there was like a time I would just look at somebody and I just had all this information. And I realized too, like in ways to really just channel that into my practice, because I learned really quickly a lot of people weren't really open to having just random conversations, in passing about like these really deep things about themselves.
Me too.
You're like, excuse me, do you want to talk about the trauma you're experiencing? Because I can totally see it all.
Yeah.
I can figure it out real quick.
But yeah, I think like too, a huge part of something I went through really right before COVID kind of came into the awareness of the collective in December 2019. I was having like just this huge acceptance of this human experience. And just talking to certain people too that maybe didn't fully grasp what I was saying about really like accepting being human, like being here and being in this body, and really like this deep acceptance, which
I think that people needed to hear that right then. I really feel like a lot of us need that reminder, like a deep acceptance of being human, because like a lot of us want to leave our bodies a lot. And that comes down to like the addiction thing and the, disassociating and the depression that happens amongst us, and the anxiety, because dude, when you're this aware, it's not easy. And like you said, like you can, like for me, I'll be sitting with somebody and I'll have all this information coming in. And it's, that's a lot. That's a burden to carry around sometimes when it's just constant information coming at you. So full acceptance of having this human experience is what I think we all need to be reminded of, because that's why we incarnated.
Yep. There's no planet like Earth.
Definitely not.
We got too many unique things down here to pass it up. But on top of the change is the best part of it all, when it all finally transitions and we get to see all of that. It's going to be so worthwhile. But he's to hurry up. Like what, 5 to 10 years out? We're getting close.
Yeah, we are getting close.
Less.
I truly feel that. I really feel like, I think Tawni can agree that like we've been feeling like some big things are around the corner.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's actually kind of funny because one of my friends who I haven't talked to about this kind of stuff yet, she texted me randomly. She's like, I feel like some good change is coming. I can't explain it. Do you feel that way? I'm like, like, you just want to talk to them about the deeper things, but you have to be careful.
What do you feel, Tawni?
I
Are you
yeah,
excited?
I was, well, when you were talking about like some good things coming, I definitely like was experiencing that with this past full moon of just feeling like we were so like constricted in ways energetically, and it's like this breath is like starting to open up now more.
Yeah, there's big things
it's really interesting, like all the things that are going on in the world right now. But I guess things are always going on in the world right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like very accelerated at this point with the things that are I feel like, a lot of disclosure is about to occur, and a lot of people are going to need this information and us talking about all this, because once this disclosure happens, there's going to be another wave of awakening. And a lot of people are going to be having their heads spin at all this information and then like, oh my God, I've been lied to for my whole entire life.
Yeah.
Like those people are going to need a lot of psychological assistance in those moments of like, some people I feel might go mad.
Yeah, well, you do make a good point, but at the same time, with the individuals that are waking up now, I think it's because we are strong enough and are willing to help the people then when they are given that unfortunate news breaker, but we'll be there for them. And I think people will be okay. It'll be quite a shock at first, but who knows how it's going to play out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another question I have, like, just right now in general, is because I was reading, I tapped into the 3 Waves of Volunteers book again yesterday, and just like, flip to the back. And it was talking about like the physical changes we will go through, one of the clients Dolores was interviewing or doing a hypnosis on. And they were talking about the physical changes that we're going to go through. And they were saying, this person was saying, the people that haven't started the journey yet probably won't when it comes closer to the time, because it takes a process of the light body activating and purging and like being able to hold more and more light. And it can't just happen overnight. And that's why we feel all that we're feeling right now, because we're going through that process. But when it gets closer to this shift in consciousness that's going to happen, or solar event, or whatever it is going to be, this person was saying, like, it can't happen for those who are like too close to that time, because their bodies won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're in that process right now of like, hey guys, it's the last wave. Like, you got to come out. Like,
all aboard.
Choo-choo.
All aboard. Mission Starbase is leaving. Leaving the station. Well, I kind of got it. It kind of came to me while you guys were talking. So it's like this vessel is really, really, it's okay. So we're an algorithm, right? But this vessel is self-replicating, and it's also self-healing, and it's self-regenerating. And so all it's been given is this kind of like basic code, which is like urges. Urges are basic codes, right? And then it's like you're teaching yourself how to think. So when you teach yourself how to think about your environment, it's like logic. You teach yourself how to think about like your existence, and then we call that spirituality. But essentially you're like you're an algorithm teaching yourself how to expand its understanding of the actual algorithm that it is, and the algorithm that it is within, right? And so consciousness in that way does have the ability, and this is kind of where we're all getting to help evolve, or to literally by doing whatever it's doing, it's changing and it's evolving this species right now. And I feel like that's what people talk about when they say like light body or like crystalline or like moving into these things. I haven't really grasped the concept yet, but like it's almost like we're consciously able to manipulate the construct, which is our physical reality. And that makes sense to me, you know,
Mhm.
like, because it all starts with consciousness.
Mhm.
But there's something, I don't know, there's something about the imprint of vibrations, or like music. Like we all love music, but why do we love music? You know, like what is it about like those tones that feel good against our tones?
You
Because
could feel
we're
it.
vibration. We're vibration. It's vibration. Why is it all vibrating? Is just vibrating, and you know what I mean? It's just vibrations on vibrations. Like what's going on? I don't know. It's too thick. Sorry.
I mean, I know for me,
It's all vibrate. It's all vibes, man. It's all vibes, man.
I mean, I love a lot of what you
We're
said.
literally just numbers. Yeah.
I for me too, that's why I've been drawn to crystal singing bowls too,
Yeah.
is that frequency and that resonance. And you know, in our body we have two nervous systems and they both can't operate at the same time. But on a cellular level, our body those cells can remember one or the other being active, which is something that has like really made itself apparent to me in my work. But so the two systems, right, is the sympathetic nervous system, which is like our fight, flight, paralysis, and the parasympathetic, which is our state of relaxation or the state of healing, the state that healing can take place. It's like the place it feels safe to be. And I'm not quite sure where I was going with this. But I feel like
they can't operate at the same time, you were saying.
Yeah, they can't operate so it's like I feel like the more we train ourselves to be in that parasympathetic, to be in that place of safety, right, within ourselves, regardless of what's going on in our environment, the more we're able to I guess it kind of goes back to that light body that you were talking about and the crystalline structures. It's like we're able to take on more and hold more of that light information.
Yes.
But yeah, there's so what I was kind of tying that together is that the depending on the frequency, I mean, I don't know if you've listened to music that just makes you feel sick, but depending on the frequency also can help you in assisting like activating those states.
Right. That's and bringing you into a higher frequency, like immediately shifting you, which helps you shift your consciously shift your physical reality. Which is why I feel they put like such low vibrational music out right now. Like everything is so low frequency on purpose.
Yeah.
What
Unfortunately, people haven't realized it yet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. You know, you're right. It's all tuned to 440. It's completely out of balance with like the natural harmonic resonance of the earth. 528 is supposed to be like the most ideal like center. I guess they call it the center of the electromagnetic spectrum. But go ahead. I forgot what I was going to say.
I think our brains are fried today, you guys.
Oh, what if it's just the attention that we give? Like, think about it this way, right? Everything kind of fits together, and it's just like your brain can't know everything because it has to know one thing at a time. You're like a processor. You're literally like if you know anything about computers, it's like the CPU, the central it can only process so much information at one time. So it literally cannot, like it's all stored in the memory bank, which is the Akashic records. We can all tap into that. It's what you're doing when you're channeling or whatever. So it's like you're only able to process this much information at a time. But what if that's it though? It's like the type of information we process, right? If we're processing I'm not going to use them as an example. If we're processing mainstream media, right? It's like then we're maybe you guys can kind of like help me with like fill this in, but like if you're processing like literally like drama, 3D, oh, they broke up with them, oh, this person's trying to take away our rights, oh, you know what I mean, like this like mental kind of like typical programming, I mean, we're talking about aliens. We're talking about like existence, what we're doing in this life, what our mission is. Like we're finding out like, do you know what I mean? Like all these mysteries, I feel like we kind of like are getting to like start to really understand right now. And so it's just we're processing different information now. So maybe we need a new vessel to process that information. Do you
Hence
understand
the
what I'm saying?
upgrade. Hence the
It-
upgrade in our
It's our
DNA.
thought.
Upgrades.
Yep.
We will naturally have to sort of process this information as a species with a different mechanism, which will be this new body or whatever.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Oh, Dominique was commenting in the chat saying that they were reading this paper on evolutionary psychiatry. God, I cannot read. Maybe mine's spread.
Psychiatry?
Yes.
Wow.
That humanity became susceptible to mental health issues to avoid evolution. Honestly.
To aid.
And especially the medication that you're taking for that stuff too. Can fuck with your head.
I get what you're saying, because I also it's that saying, it goes back to that saying that everything is happening for us, not to us necessarily.
Yeah.
And I think something that's been like pretty prevalent in my awareness too is also being the observer, right? It's like I can observe what's going on television without taking it in necessarily.
Yeah.
I can observe that I'm watching, this program, and not necessarily have to process the information, but I can just observe all of the details that are happening and what's occurring. And I think what's more important, there's definitely some doctors that have released more of like this research in how, like, basically like what happens to our crystalline structure as it takes in more light. And that really our outer experience and our internal experience isn't separate, right? And so we have these happenings that are going on outside of us, but like hands down, what I've witnessed, what I've experienced within myself has been what I make of what I am experiencing. It's like that is the vibration. Like that is the vibration that my body is, my vessel is going to be experiencing, is what I choose to make of it. It's like if I'm eating, even if I'm eating something and I'm like, wow, I really shouldn't be eating this, and I'm eating it, I feel like that it's like we create almost this conflict with ourselves. And, I tell people, if they like sugar, if you want to eat it, I think moderation is a big part of it, but like whatever you do, like do it with love, do it with joy, because your body's going to listen to what you tell it as well.
Yeah, because the body is so intelligent.
Yeah.
So maybe I can tell my body that I'm super fit, and then I could just like get being super fit.
Yeah. Do you?
But listen to your body.
Whatever.
It's a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
That made me think of
It's a dialogue.
JP. There's a guy on Instagram. His name's JP. Anyways,
Spears.
What's that?
JP Spears?
Yeah, JP.
Yeah,
Spears.
he's great. Yeah,
so he does a lot of workouts like coupled with intentions, where he's stating affirmations as he's working out, and
oh, that's great.
That's incredible.
I love that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Affirmations help. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's like programming. It's another form of programming, but it's like a positive programming.
It is, because it's literally just thinking. As long as you're thinking, you just conform your mind to be where you want it to be. You can't keep thinking, oh, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Or if I eat this, it's going to do this. But maybe that's why when you were saying, oh, maybe I could say I'm fit and just eat whatever I want. Honestly, I think that could be possible.
Good.
But
could be possible.
At the same time, like moderation, as Tawni was saying, is very, very important. You have to make sure you balance that.
Well, I think too, it's like we could say I'm going to be fit and eat whatever I want, but like truthfully, there's so much more, right, in our consciousness that that we get to be aware of.
Yeah, too.
And, you know, it's like we can't necessarily dismiss all of the things that we've learned in our own experience. And maybe it's like we've also, on some level, we could have taken things on from other people's experiences, right? Because it's like we adapt and we take things on that help us feel safe, right? That help us feel like we can continue to survive and be here. And
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, it's just all so interesting how, like, when we really go within and we look at like what that is specifically for us, that makes us feel safe and that allows us to be relaxed. It's like, how can we set ourselves up for I guess, like, for being here.
Yeah, for
Really.
a successful human journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to get crazier and crazier soon being human. So we're going to need this advice, grounded Tawni, on how to continue to stay grounded.
I think like even the comment that was made about mental health issues actually aiding in the growth of, well, actually, let me see what exactly it said. Evolutionary psychiatry, that humanity became susceptible to mental health issues to aid in evolution. It's kind of like that, this thing that, like, our challenges are the way, right? They're teaching us, they're showing us what's not working for us, and, you know, with that exploration where we identify what does, and how, like, that really instills a learning in people too, to have certain experiences to know, like, okay, this is what's resonating and this is not.
Yeah. And what are you willing to let go of and be brave enough to, like, step into more alignment with your higher version? There's a lot of people experiencing right now. There's a lot of needing to let go of things right now. Let go of people, let go of, you know, friends that are no longer in alignment, relationships that are no longer in alignment. There's a lot that's being shown to people to be brave enough to, like, support their highest timeline right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that was said earlier about like helping people, and this has been something that has really been I guess just part of my lesson as a practitioner and as somebody that likes to provoke healing with people, is recognizing those that, like, really aren't open to it. As I feel like a lot of star seeds, right? Like, we all want to help. All want to help. And so it's like, what do you, I don't know, like, I'm curious on your guys' end, like, what is it that you've experienced as far as, like, really letting go of the need to help if you recognize, like, somebody's not open to it?
That's a tough one. I've experienced that one yet because
Are you still struggling with that?
People, but
do you still struggle with it?
Me?
When are you laughing?
Or Tawni?
You,
what?
Either of you, struggling with wanting to help somebody that is not open to it, and just being able to let that go.
Yeah, exactly. But because no matter how hard you just want to be there for them, they just don't want to accept it, or they don't want to come to terms with the choices and decisions that they've made. It takes a toll sometimes, and sometimes they can take it out on you, or it takes a toll on your mental state, and sometimes you have to choose yourself over them and just let it go, I guess. It's hard to watch people walk away that you've known for a long time, but I guess when things surface and they don't want any assistance and they just want to keep staying in denial, you just can't do anything but walk away and hope that they eventually come to terms with it and catch up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to let people sometimes, but they got to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. What about you, Agent?
So I just had this download on the way from the coffee shop home that, you know, it's like all things are source, right? I mean, there's just it depends how far you want to go down this road, but like it's all source, right? So I feel like the really big difference that you really only have to focus on is when you have something that is successful, or you have something that can make you wealthy or powerful, or, you know, whatever it is in your life. If something can like sort of give you energy from the world, you realize that it was a gift from source. You realize that you're a channel, that you are source, that you're giving that, and that should be something that you share with as many people as possible to help humanity in general, right? I mean, you don't, it could be small, it could be big, it could be small, whatever. Just become like a more evolved species. I feel like that's kind of just it, right? Unity consciousness, just do that. And then where it gets murky, or where we get into like what we consider to be kind of like the evil of the world, is like understanding that idea and being like, oh, it's mine, and I'm going to use this to enrich and I'm going to actually then go and like make sure that everyone else around me doesn't threaten me and my power. I feel like that's kind of just it. And as long as you're just in that lane of like, I'm going to share this, I'm going to like bring some sort of like prosperity to as many people as I can impact in my life, and that's the way I'm going to go about it. I feel like that's kind of it. That's all you need. And then it's whatever you want to do it. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like the people who I've tried to wake up or whatever in my life have been the ones who've spit in my face the hardest. So I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, if you want to take the only person in this world who's trying to look out for you and tell you the truth and treat them like that, it's like that whole, you know, that whole biblical story makes a lot of sense, right?
That's a common theme.
I mean, it's like Jesus was like a conspiracy theorist, let's say, right? Was he not?
I always think of Jesus
not a
when I hear
conspiracy
about these
theorist?
stories. Yeah. Yeah. About like how Jesus, Yeshua, was just trying to explain all of this knowledge and was, you know, stoned
Just
and
trying
being
to tell
made
how
fun
it
of.
was.
I think we all can relate to Yeshua.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how incredible, just from like the stories of his life that have come forward more. It's so interesting trying to explain to somebody who's never really had a curiosity, like this life journey that you've been on and how you've arrived to a certain place of understanding. Excuse me. It's like two different, like you're in like completely different dimensions as far as that, like just certain topics go.
I mean, you notice it more and more how like you literally are like talking with someone and you're like, we're in two completely different dimensions in the same reality right now. This is fucking wild. Like you literally cannot vibrate in this dimension with me at all, and we're like trying so hard to meet, but we just can't. Like it's crazy what's happening right now.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's just so interesting about language in general is I could say, you know, I went up the stairs and every single person has a different idea of what these stairs look like in their mind. Or like the word, you know, like the word compromise, like we should compromise. And it's like, you're talking about two different things. So anyway, one thing I really appreciate is trying to be as specific as I can in my communication, because I understand what our mind does as far as like just trying to fit a certain narrative in our own experience to help us think we understand.
It's kind of sad. Like I've kind of been awake since like high school, just trying to like just trying to, you know, spark a little curiosity in people's minds, you know, like I've always been like kind of the Joker character in my life. And I really thought like, okay, 2020, okay, this is going to wake a lot of people up. And then it didn't. And then people like because there was so much, you know, there was just so much propaganda. And then every time something came out, I was like, oh, that'll get them. That'll wake up the world. And then again, and then you know what? When it didn't wake everyone up, I would go on like CNN and they'd be like, and they'd have like a cover story for why that's like totally reasonable. And I'm like, damn, they got like everything that pops
They
up.
get every
out, they got a
angle.
propaganda
It's really
angle.
freaking annoying.
And you're just like, you're still falling for it. Come on, people. Come on.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you bring up psychological warfare. Like it's a thing.
I'm telling
like
you,
that's
man.
part of it. That's part of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems like there's always a choice, though. You know, like
Ooh.
we've all had a choice in all of it.
Choices. It's all choices.
It's all choices, right? And so, like
Yeah.
on some level, I also like see these things as like opportunities for more people to have greater realizations about what's going on. And you know, if only a couple people got those realizations out of it, great.
Like us.
You know, and I feel like on some level too, I feel more connected to those people.
Starseeds
because
unite.
it's like things are just more evident and more obvious.
You're like patience embodied.
Mm-hmm.
You're like the energy of patience is just like become like, you know what I mean?
We get all worked up and Tawni's like, yeah, but guys,
listen. All right.
Well, it's interesting because I asked that question about help, right? Like helping somebody, because the last sometimes I forget what year it is. It's the last like 4 years. My dad's been he was diagnosed with dementia, and for me, it has been like a huge challenge in like wanting to do all these different things for him and work these processes with him. And you know, he's allowed like a little bit of opening with me, and it's so interesting because my relationship with him now is so different than what it was when I was younger. But I have just like through this experience have learned such a deeper level of allowance and allowing people to have like these experiences that they want to have here. And if they want to leave, you know, a certain way, I kind of just surrendering to that. And like that has not been easy, but it feels like it's been necessary in a lot of ways in making me stronger and especially more patient, you know, in having to repeat myself multiple times to somebody. And just like this repetition of things is like, how many times can you say something a certain way, like in a loving, caring way before you get out of that? And I feel like that's a lot of, at least for me personally, like what I feel called to do and share here is being comfortable with like repeating something like as many times as I need to like help bring that understanding or bring that peace or whatever that is that's like already here for us to connect to. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I feel patience. And like you're very authentic. You almost have like Mother Earthy vibes. I don't know if you get that a lot, but like you feel like I feel like you're like a saint. You're like one of those like, you feel like you're one of those like statues at the church, at the cathedrals. Like you're one of those like you've come to life. You've literally like you're here and you're just like,
yeah,
it's crazy.
She's an ancient one. She's an ancient one.
Even the face is like, it's just like a very spiritual, angelic. It's crazy.
Yeah, and this is an example too of what happens because Tawni and I grew really close, and now we're just sisters forever. But it's an example of what can happen when you raise your consciousness to a certain level and you attract other very conscious people.
Yeah.
Because on the way there, it can feel really alone and like you're not vibrating with people. And then it's like her and I meet, and here we are working together, and here we are talking with you guys. But it's like, you know, like with her talking about patience, I feel a lot of people being impatient right now with like, I feel so alone, or like, you know, I want to have my community right now. Why don't I have my community? And, you know,
it just takes
Yeah.
time. It takes time, and it takes just getting to know yourself and your own stuff, right?
Yeah.
Sav,
I was just thinking about
you're a little
what
quiet.
get. Well, sorry. Well, because I have like the loudest neighbors next door, and I heard them banging, and I don't know how sensitive my mic is, so I like muted myself for like a good
Banging?
3 minutes. Like, I don't know what it is. They're just
Banging?
super loud with the garbage
They're
bins.
banging.
Like, they were like banging around like with their
You
fence
mean
and
like hanging a
everything.
picture?
No. I'm in a house. No. But the neighbors next door, they're just kind of loud. I lost what I was gonna say.
like putting together IKEA furniture banging, right?
No.
This is a PG show, lady.
No, but
We never said this was a PG show.
I know.
I mean, we're
right?
all over 18, right?
Our disclaimer.
Content only.
So are you also energetic, like people call it chi, or whatever, healing it, like whatever energy? Do you do any of that stuff? Are you more what's your spectrum, right? Like when you work?
My spectrum. Well, I started doing some Reiki attunements with Gail, which is really interesting because I feel like I've been using this energy in the way that like Reiki is more defined. My spectrum, I feel like my like biggest strengths are working with the emotional, mental, and like spiritual aspects of people.
Mhm.
And I work with the subtle energy body. Like there's different electrical corrections that I help them make strong again.
Mhm.
Kind of an extension of answering that question of like what people go home with too,
Mhm.
is like I'll give them different pressure points to massage until those points like aren't sore anymore and they're in balance. It could take up to 3 weeks. So like I teach people like how to fix certain things or how to correct them. I'll give them like some vibrational sayings that there's an exercise to do with it that help with clearing emotional inherited traits, and that could take some days of a process of really like releasing that vibration out of the body.
Mhm.
Nutrition,
And
it just depends. Like
can you
I'm
go into that a little bit more? Explain that to people, because I know it gets stored in the body. There's this kind of correlation.
which part?
The body emotional aspect of that, and how that works.
Yeah, so there's our emotional experience, right? And then there's emotionally inherited experiences. And which you could come in, right? Like you could be born with inherited emotions that you just thought were normal. And I'm speaking from my own experience where I've cleared these emotionally inherited traits, and I felt like I was like a new person. Like I wasn't familiar with this like emotional body experience without these emotions anymore. And it felt incredible. I mean, like in a way I could relate it to just kind of this like having this huge release and like allowing like this bliss to come in to like fill that space that once was this other thing. So how things can get stored is, so with the energy testing, like I'll go back to like the age at which your body remembers to be being free of something or last remembers experiencing something. And what I realized too when it comes to even like physical symptoms is that the body remembers being in a like a survival state. So coming from like this background of psychology, I've really realized that all kind of right disease, any kind of physical symptom is mimicking the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, or paralysis. Unless it's like you have a cut and your body's like already in a healing state, it begins to repair those tissues naturally. But it's like anything that's kind of created, right, is kind of just this, in this way, this misdirection of our creative energy. So we can go back to like an age that the body last remembered something, and it's always on the emotional, in the emotional body. So there's different emotions that I test for to see what resonates with somebody. Like, for example, frustration, deep-rooted fear, suppressed anger, overwhelming burden, jealousy, envy, and there's some more. So we'll find out what resonates at that age, and then we go to discover kind of who was involved. Like if there was anyone else involved or if it was just you, we just test what resonates. And it's so interesting. There's definitely a lot of times where an age pops up and someone's like, oh yeah, that's when my sister was born, or that's when I was in this car accident. Or
is this also RR? Are you talking about resonance repatterning?
I'm not familiar with that, but
Okay.
I would imagine like a lot of this stuff probably comes from a similar truth, similar understanding. I know applied kinesiology kind of really became more prevalent from what's his name, Dr. Goodman. He wrote like I think I might have that name wrong. The Power versus Force. There's a book called Power versus Force, and it's really just all about being in resonance and being in that flow and that grace. But yeah, so what I've also realized is like through that emotional, like releasing, emotional processing, emotional, just like it's kind of like taking this like state of immaturity that's like been stuck in the past or living in the past more, and bringing it to a more matured present moment, bringing it to the present moment state of awareness. There's kind of just this natural release that happens, and this strengthening that occurs, and then I'll like go to test somebody again, and it's like it's not there anymore.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So what's going on? So it's like you're stuck in the past? Is that, I mean, it's like,
I think
and
it's just
that's
like
causing
it's something
disease?
that really resonates for somebody, is
Yeah.
and it's so specific and unique to our own individual experience. It's kind of hard to, without just giving examples,
No,
to really describe it without
people have done it on
experience.
me. That's what I'm saying. When people did it on me, they called it resonance repatterning, and they even did the muscle testing thing. Gail told me that you do that too. So it's literally the same thing. And whether it, I mean, they're just calling it what, I don't know what people are calling it, but like, it's so weird because it's worked on me, and I've literally like bawled my eyes out. Like it really breaks you down, and it gets through. So I would definitely recommend it if anyone, wants to do it. Like, this is for real. And you're right. You go to your certain age, you muscle test for it, like 1 through 5 or whatever. I don't know if you do the age groups like that, but they can pinpoint like a specific thing that happened, and then literally like, do you do the thing where you talk through almost reprogramming that event as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's like we do a process with it. It just depends if it's usually like if it's really young, a lot, sometimes people don't remember, or they don't remember certain things for different reasons. So I'll do a little bit of a different process with them. But sometimes even just talking about it can shift the whole thing. Like I actually, like I've had some really interesting things come up for people that aren't really like protocol of what I was taught necessarily.
Yeah.
But like I had I did a session with this woman who was having like some issues with her ovaries, and she wanted to conceive with her husband, and literally the only priority that came up was emotional. And so we went back to a certain age, and the only thing that occurred was she just all of a sudden like recalled this level of joy and bliss in their relationship. And then within 2 months, she was back at the doctor, and the doctor's like, you don't have any issues. Like whatever you did, like you healed yourself.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
So
awesome.
it's so personal.
Praise Jesus.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so personal to each person as far as like what it is that you experienced in your life at that time that you're like on some level holding on to, that's not serving you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And is it just the body becomes like a really easy way for the subconscious mind to talk to the conscious mind? Is that just like the conduit for us to kind of realize it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me as a practitioner, like I'm calling in the highest information that is like in service to the optimal well-being of whomever I'm working with. So
Yeah.
I know that the intention of your practitioner is incredibly important. There's a lot of people that will say different things about applied kinesiology, and I truly know and believe that that has everything to do with the person practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
That makes
total
sense.
Like even the universe like will use physical circumstances to communicate with you. So I'm just wondering if that's why the subconscious mind puts it in the body, right? Like it's almost like, do you guys talk about this at all? Like why?
Oh, I get
why,
what you're. Yeah,
why
I
the
get.
trauma gets stored as a thing for you to notice, for you to, do you know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying, and part of me thinks there's a misconception, right? That memory is just in our brain. But I think we use the whole thing. Our memory is cellular, and so our cells can remember certain things or can remember a distortion of something based on which nervous system was activated at the time. That can cut off, it can create electrical weaknesses and communication blocks from being present, from being in this present moment and feeling safe.
Can you use an example? I mean, you don't have to name who it was, just like a loose example, and like kind of just go into like where this thing is. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's more like in the gut, or sometimes it's, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing that kind of stuff, but
yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Well,
like how?
so I hear what you're saying, and that's also like part of the emotional process. Let me think of an example. Okay, so I was working with this woman who had like cysts on her spine, and it was like immediately like we gave voice to like this pain in her body, and the age 4 had come up, and it was like this 4-year-old little girl, right? So in correcting that, then I also ask people like where if they feel any residue in their body, anything that's like left over, and there's some processes you can do with that as well. But for the most part, like all of this is like emotional and electrical related, right? It's like they say like our physical choices and like actions really like only account for like maybe 10% of our experience on a level of health.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I'm just kind of like, I mean, it's all vibration. So even when we say physical, it's not really physical. It's just energetic. But yeah, it's just always interesting to kind of figure out how everything's fit together. And you talked about like pressure points. Yeah.
Tawni, if you were to, if somebody wanted to do like a quick muscle test on themselves, like does it work for decision making? Like which way you want to go, which decision you want to make, or what's best for you? Does it work for that kind of stuff with muscle testing?
Sure, yeah, you can. You can, something that I do with a lot of clients, like at the beginning of a session, is the think feel test. Like, so if you're gonna muscle test this way, right, the idea is to just lightly grasp, and all of you can do this, right? So it's like just lightly touching your fingers, and you can say yes and no. And so it's just identifying like a yes and a no response, or what resonates. And
wow.
So you can say, I think I want this thing, or I feel I do. And if they're both strong, that means like you're single-minded about it. But the reason why I do this with people in the beginning is I test that, like, I think this is something I want to heal. And I feel that this is something I want to heal, because I want to make sure that they're ready for it. Like because if something's coming up and is in the way, like it's, they're going to have all sorts of reasons why they can't follow through. Or
wow.
Yeah.
Have you experienced someone not following through when you're working with them?
Yes. And I learned like that I have to do this think feel test like before I really start going deep with anybody, because it's more of a frustrating process, right? Like, as I want to set, like, I'm here to provide information, and I really like seeing people succeed at the things that they want. And so it's just making sure that they're single-minded in what they want too. Because it's like that the subconscious can get kind of sneaky in that way if we're not aware, or like if I'm working with people that are their intention is to increase their self-awareness, like I really want to help set them up for success in that, so that it's not a frustrating process for them as well.
Right. Yeah, you have to truly want the healing in order for it to be successful. It's what we learn in the Reiki world too. It's like, you can't just go to somebody and say, do you want healing? Because you might be, you
want healing?
You want some healing?
Oh, you want healing, y'all?
You want some healing?
I give you so good healing. Best healing ever. Please come in. Come inside,
hey, you want some healing? Come on. I'll meet you in the corner for some healing.
Just,
you're so
you just set up a little lemonade stand down the dark alley, but it's really for healing or something. And then they knock you out. You wake up a whole new person, though.
I got that healing, bro. You got the healing on?
You want to come into my
man, I saw that girl.
I got that healing, bro.
You guys are gonna see me on the corner of the streets in LA, all over the place now. I'm just like, hey, want some healing?
I feel like Tawni, I feel like
healing types.
When people do RR on me, like I had some really cool special people in my life that knew how to do RR, and they would just do it for free. And that really helped with like early childhood trauma. So if you're I even like recommended that someone in my family do it, and they were like just kind of afraid or in denial of that kind of energy or whatever. So, it's like almost so strong people can feel like, oh no, I don't want, like, why would anyone resist doing it if it was nothing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So subconsciously they're like, oh, I don't have the balls to like, go through that. But yeah, I feel like there's something about like wanting to understand your shortfalls, your limitations. And that's something that I feel like you have to have if you're going to heal, is like to want to be like, I want to be a better person. I need to be more patient. I need to be more accepting. I feel like accepting is a big one that kind of generalizes everything that like I need to become more of in my personal life. Is I need to become more accepting, and that just kind of seems like the theme that like continues me to want to, you know what I mean, like understand the world better, understand myself better. And it does lead, it seems mental, right? But you said like it's all connected, and then it kind of results emotionally by like releasing the stress that I had by attaching expectations to a world that I envision to be what I want to be reality, but it's not reality. You know what I mean? And so there's sort of like an emotional reaction that I get, which is non-acceptance, which is denial, and just accepting and just accepting. And I don't know if you go through that with your sessions, but it seems to be what like works best is just like trying to accept what you cannot change. You know, those like stupid things. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you're right on in that. Of
You know,
really identifying what is in your field of choice.
yeah.
You know, and letting go of whatever that is, like feeling disturbed, or if it's disturbance, or I even think like pressure, you know, and feeling like we need to do these things rather than like I would like to experience more of this, and also, or for example, more level of acceptance,
Yeah.
and I just want to let go of whatever's in the way of that, and just simplifying it, and like kind of taking off whatever stress, you know, we might be putting on ourselves, like if we weren't to be more accepting, you know, or
Yeah.
Also being accepting of like wherever we are right now,
Yeah.
in that process. And that's, you know, that can be completely humbling as well.
Yeah, it's like you're in this circumstance, and the lowest mind possible, like what we talked about earlier, the egoic animal brain can be like, oh, I'm freaked out. This isn't going this way. This, you know, this person is trying to scare me, or like, you know, you just like, you know, like operating like a squirrel. You know what I mean? Just like everything scares it. It runs away from, you know what I mean? It's just like trying to collect as much possible. Like it's just totally freaking out, you know? And then there's like oh, I can step back. I can get into my higher consciousness and be like, oh, I'm the creator. I am the all that like makes all this happen. And I'm just going through the experience of testing myself and putting myself through challenges. And everyone else around me is just trying to co-create this reality together with the information that they know at their disposal. And everything's happening in divine timing according to like how I should be moving through life. You know what I mean? And that's like a super kind of like pulled back, elevated understanding of like what your life is. So you can be, you know, you can do worm's eye view and be like, ah, or you can do like bird's eye view and be like, there's some stuff happening down there. And to that little individual that calls themselves Starseed Agent.
My God, all of that build up for that ending was perfect, bro.
He's going through a little test here, isn't he?
Oh my
Lord. He's putting himself through quite a blunder. Quite a blunder he finds
Gail
himself in.
Gail lost her mind. We lost Gail.
He's in quite a predicament this time, isn't he? How's he going to get out of this one? Let's see. Tune in next week.
I mean,
it's like if God was watching the show, this is the only thing he'd want to watch because this shit is entertaining, right?
And that's the crazy thing, because we are God and we're watching our own show. What?
Yeah.
What?
Well, is he tuned into your boring ass program over there? Like whatever, you know, like or are you giving him a show worth watching, right? Like maybe that's what we should live for.
I love that. That should be
You've got a show worth watching.
Yes.
Would God want to watch your life? Would he want to be involved in your life? Yes or no? Like, what are you doing? You know, it's kind of cute, right?
Well, I feel like the Truman Show had some truth to it, you know?
Yeah, right? It got more interesting when he started to wake up and he started to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, it was kind of wild.
Yeah.
I never understood that movie until I woke up. And I was like, oh, it's like a big fake show.
Yeah. It is.
doesn't he just like decides to leave Or like
I can't
figure
remember.
out how
Doesn't
to
he?
leave? I'm trying to
Well, there's
remember.
so there's the trauma of not being able to cross the water because that's how his dad died. Allegedly, that's the mental programming they gave him. His dad died off of a boat that he was on. So that's why they keep him surrounded by water on an island. And then finally he overcomes his greatest fear, which is sailing, because they make the driving out totally impossible. So then he has to sail, and he goes to the end of the voyage and he hits the wall. So he had to overcome his fear, which was programmed into him, which was a rational fear of sailing. And then when he overcame his fear, that's when he hit the wall and he started to realize that it was all an illusion. So it's like overcoming your fear. I feel like that was kind of like the big takeaway was like, yeah, the world is an illusion, and all these fears are programmed into you by people who are, putting on the show.
They want
Yeah.
you to stay afraid, so it can suck away your energy like little vampires they are.
Yep. Damn vampires.
Yeah. I really like that you do that, Tawni, because these people who are in my life, my friends who do it, I was like, this is like the best thing in the world, and this should be practiced by as many people as possible. And it's just a beautiful thing.
Tawni,
Yeah,
would you train people?
I'm working on that right now. I'm putting some things together right now. I think that I may be training some people starting next year sometime. But yeah, I definitely would love to teach more people this stuff. Because it's great at any age as far as I think there's a lot of things that happen when we're younger that tend to come forward, especially initially, right? Like kind of really getting into some past stuff that we forgot, but our body remembers. It's in the subconscious, right? And it's like the moment we identify those things, it's like, oh yeah, that happened. But it also, like, I'm seeing it from a completely different perspective. And I think too, it's like choosing more and more to be the observer is a really great thing in showing us our choices. And it's like the more we can really train ourselves to be an observation of what's going on. I know for me that's what muscle testing has really done for me, is like helping me identify some things that maybe have been a little bit harder for me to just look at, to see from a conscious place. Mm-hmm. But it's like calling that energy forward and then kind of sitting with it and allowing whatever that thing is that has been suppressed to come up and to surface and to show me, like, what's the lesson here. I feel like the only other part about muscle testing that can really set people up for success is thinking and feeling you want to know the truth. Because that can be a challenge for some people too.
Yeah.
And wanting to hear it, wanting to know what that really is about. Because then they have a responsibility to it.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. Mm. That's big right now with a lot of people. I feel like with the truth in general about everything that's going on in the collective, it's like a lot of people, it's almost like they subconsciously understand what's going on, but they don't really know, because then it becomes a responsibility like we have, which is not an easy one. No.
Or subconsciously, it's like subconsciously they know that they can't do anything about it, and there's no and they could be reliant on the system. We forget how many people are like really plugged into the matrix, and like,
oh yeah,
it's like, whatever. It's like the people in power know exactly what's going on, but they can't do anything against the real forces that are in control from behind this. Like there's nothing they can do. So why bring it up? Well, it's like, it's the same thing for our individual lives. Like,
well, it's almost like they can't infiltrate the people that are already awakened anymore. But there are people, like Tawni said, that are making the choice, and it's always a choice to continue to remain in the programming. And I always think of that movie, The Matrix, where he just chooses, like, he's like, I can't take this anymore. I don't want to be red pilled anymore. And he goes back, and then he's like, "Oops, never mind. I don't want to be here anymore." And it's a choice.
But if you really red pill yourself right now, you got to realize that the whole system is an illusion. It's actually illegal. We get into the whole system being a corporation, and it's like everything is a lie, like everything. Yeah. And so if you want to red pill yourself, you're gonna have to like find a completely different career. Most often, I mean, some people might be like already cool, and then they can continue whatever. But like
transitioning.
At that level, literally red pilling means like changing your entire behaviors, just like the way that you do everything. It's a completely shifting the person you are. And so I just think that there's like, I don't know. Now I'm getting down like a little negative Nancy. People are lazy. They don't even want to change their diet. They're not going to change their whole mode of thinking. I don't know, Tawni, what do you think about that? I generally think people are just lazy and stupid, but go ahead.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on. Have you been out there? How many people are at a fucking sports game right now just cheering on a fucking stranger in a uniform? It's just bizarre.
I got neighbors with kids that don't freaking shut up. Yeah,
it's bizarre, Tawni. They get in fights over imaginary teams in a parking lot where they're drinking beer. It's just like Earth is wild, y'all. It's like a
it's a wild Earth.
It's wild, you know? It's a wild planet. I feel like Steve Irwin over here. All right, yeah.
Crikey.
All right, yeah, we're going out here. There's a couple blokes punching each other in the face here over abroad. Oh, she does have them big knockers there. Let's go. Let's have a closer look. It's just, you know.
I feel like so much has just been said.
Well,
anyway. You know, it's like this high. It's like people don't understand that people. Okay, let me just put it to you this way: people don't understand how to tie their own shoes. Okay, people don't understand how to operate technology. They don't know, like they don't even know how to operate some things, let alone how to like program those, let alone how the whole financial system works, let alone how the whole political system works, how it's tied into the. You know what I mean? Like it's just too complex. This is what I'm realizing as well. It's like the system is so complex that it's like it's out of the mental grasp of most people, and therefore they cannot deconstruct it because they can't even construct it. Sorry, I'm
well, no, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I also like have this other voice that's like, well, I didn't know how to tie my shoes until I was taught. I didn't know how computer worked until I learned, and I get to when you see a bigger picture, how overwhelming that can feel. Talking to somebody who's like, has no idea that the picture exists.
That's why your homeboys are out there drawing fucking sacred geometry in the desert, because it's too big of an issue for them. And they're like, you know what? I'm just going to be happy. And I understand that. Oh my God, I understand that.
Yeah.
I respect the hell out of that. Just to be like, you know what? Let's leave it to old Starseed Agent. He'll come up with a plan. I'm going to be drawing this, man. I'm going to be drawing these like circles of life and flowers of life in the desert.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But she has such a voice of reason too, of like, here's a good point that Tawni just brought up. Like, a lot of these people can't understand this stuff because none of it's being put in front of them enough, because there's been so much filtered information. That's why they were like shadow banning everybody during COVID who were trying to put truth out. There's a lot of filtered information in the history books and the way that they teach people in the public schools how to live. Yeah. Like, they're filtering the information so it can't be taught to them. That's why they're so dumb sometimes.
No, I didn't mean to be mean. I didn't mean to be rude or mean. I'm sorry.
I didn't think you were either one of those. Okay.
I said lazy and stupid. So.
It's frustrations.
Well, and I get that, and I almost feel like like as a star seed or somebody that identifies as one. A spiritual being having a human experience, like definitely not being from this planet. or feeling like you're from here, and then realizing where the collective is at as far as their own conscious development. I feel like there's a huge level of acceptance in that, right? And really like accepting it to the degree that you can embrace it, right? And love it and assist it in its growth and building. And like if these certain, like I feel like this is just coming through right now, like if these certain methods aren't working to reach people, like discovering new ones.
Ooh, yeah.
And not,
Which is why
you
we're
know,
here.
just not giving up, not feeling like it's hopeless.
Yeah.
Just gotta keep pushing.
I like that about developing new methods. If it's not working and people aren't getting it, maybe there's a new way that we're supposed to come up with and create for them to understand. Yeah.
You know what it is? It's not even that, like, it's just the opportunity. You're right. It's, I mean, and I mean, we're gonna talk about this whole Starbase thing. I think it's called Starbase now. It's just like we need to set people up with the tools to succeed. That's basically it. Like part of this whole new earth literally is just like, how do we build the infrastructure for humanity to thrive? Because humanity will thrive in the right circumstances, right? We're gardeners in a way that we're not trying to pull the seed from the ground and be like, hey, grow. Why don't you grow? You're supposed to be growing, right? It's like water, sunlight, love, space, time. You know, create an environment that is nutrient rich, and the trees will grow, and this planet will grow, and people will evolve. It's like, how do you create that environment? You know? Sorry.
I think it's a matter of raising everyone's consciousness to a certain level to where we can begin to create more of that.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to ourselves too. And like, as I'm listening to you, it's back to that like inner and outer game of like, what feels safe to me to move forward with, you know, like what's the safe space to create this in, that it is going to thrive. What resonates.
Well, how do you, it's like people want to learn about them, which is number one. I've learned that's a good tool to use. Try to make it about them, exploring themselves. Like when you're trying to like get someone to explore the universe or like higher realms of consciousness or like understanding reality at a more fundamental level, like existentialism, how do you turn it back to like, you're actually just learning about yourself and how expanded you can become? You know?
I'm like, can you repeat that question? Like, how do you help them understand that they're learning about themselves?
I don't know. I just like, I feel like there is, I don't know. I feel like there's only so much you can do by putting the information out there. I think what we're doing is we're hacking. We'll talk about it later. We're hacking the matrix right now because we're moving from, in my mind, we're moving from a position of how do I help people wake up to how do I build a system where people naturally wake up and I don't have to do anything. That is like next level. That's kind of like where my mind is at. Like, how do we build something that's just, it's, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to work anymore.
Yeah, it just thrives.
It wakes itself up. You
You
set the algorithm, boom, and then the system wakes itself up, and you, because I can't, you know.
I think we're in the middle. We're in the middle of figuring that out right now.
You know.
Yeah.
The first thought that comes to my mind is like, how do you assist somebody in identifying where their life experience comes from?
Yeah, you know how okay, so it's like you know how right now people are like, okay, I'm a social media influencer, right? I am a brand ambassador. I am a yada yada yada, right? Those identities come after there is some kind of a technology that is built that is provided, a service, a platform, something like that, right? So it's like someone didn't go out there, Gail,
Uh-oh.
where's Gail? Someone didn't go out there.
Oh,
Someone didn't go out there and say, "Oh, I want to turn all these people into brand ambassadors and influencers." They built the software, right? They built the mechanism for people to go out there and become this. So it's almost like if we want to enlighten people, instead of saying like, "How can I enlighten people?" It's like, "How do we build a network or how do we build a system that people will naturally become enlightened?" You know what I'm saying? And then
Yeah, it's
how do we build a garden to then just like be like people will naturally want to come and want to be more enlightened for themselves, to be an enlightened person. Do you understand what I'm saying?
hmm yeah. I have a question that pops up,
Go
and
for it.
it's
There she is.
how do we know we're not already in that?
How do we know?
Yeah, how do we know we're not already like in that algorithm that naturally wakes people up?
What is it?
Well,
What's
I think her
everything that's
question
going
Name
on
is,
it.
here?
You don't name it. But go
yeah.
ahead. What is
Name
it?
it?
What are you describing? You said, how do we know that we're not already in it? So what is it and what do we call it?
Wait, I I was referring to what you were talking about. Of like,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
do we? How do we
My
know?
argument is that we're not in it, and then I'm asking you if you think we're in it, what is it called? You know? Do you think the pandemic is that's what it is? Or whatever this like whole event is happening right now? That's actually what it is.
I think there's there's a series of things that are happening here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things happening here. There's a lot of things that we can observe energetically that are going on around us. Not that we have to open ourselves to them, but we can observe them.
Okay.
And I think I what I heard you say was, you know, how do we you went from social media platform creating these influencers
Yeah.
to, you know, talking about creating an algorithm that like creates people to be what did you say, light workers?
Well, like, okay, so John D. Rockefeller basically took over the medical schools in the late 1800s.
Right.
And by shaping through philanthropy and through getting himself elected to the board of directors because he was donating so many millions of dollars to all these colleges around the country, he was able to buy influence over the medical system, therefore influencing all of the medical doctors that came out of those schools, therefore influencing how they pushed prescription drugs in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So do you see what I'm saying? It's like you create the mechanism and then you get to influence the minds. So if our objective here is to raise consciousness, which I believe it is, it's like, what is our mechanism that we are doing in this world that is not happening by the world? Because I'm more interested in like, what am I doing in this world? So that's what I'm saying. Like, what is that mechanism, and how do we create the most efficient system that we can do, right? That does this. What is that? Is it a school? Is it, you know, what is it? Is it Mission Starbase? Is this it?
Well, I think she's right. We are in it. We are in it already. Like, this is what we're doing right now.
She is right. It's both. It's
but
the
I
universe is
hear
doing
what
some
you're
and we're doing
saying.
some.
Like, how
What
do
are we
you
doing?
be how do we reverse like this thing that's happened?
Yeah.
You know, and I think too a lot of that comes back to a collective energy too of what is needed to assist in that growth and in that strengthening, and it doesn't necessarily look pretty.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this is we're in the thick of this shit right now. Is
I guess
figuring out.
Mind Valley is like an example. I don't know.
Mhm.
I feel like there's more tangible examples that we can point to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and there's so many great apps too that assist people
Yeah.
in self-reflection. But I hear what you're saying too, is like, how do we assist people in also recognizing like the importance of the need, right? But
Yeah.
on some level too, like I didn't like have these realizations until I it was like this opportunity was provided, like to like you really need to pay attention to this thing, and I think that's even what pain is,
Mhm.
how do we, if we avoid something, like it kind of just gets louder, especially when like the spirit wants us to hear it. It will
Mhm.
just get louder until it will just get louder and louder until we hear the message or it takes us someplace else.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't I'm going to think about your question because I'm like, what is that? And it sounds like too, there's this calling for you of
Yeah.
providing like a service that feels of need to a lot of people.
Mission Starbase.
Mission Starbase. Here we go. This is your captain speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how are we doing on time, guys? What do we
We're a
think?
little over 2 hours, and so let's wrap it up with any more questions anyone might have,
Yeah.
or
Go for it,
anything
Tav.
that we'd like to add. So, or is there anything that you would like to add, Tawni?
Just that I'm so grateful to have been here today with you all, and
Oh, the pleasure's
I've
ours.
loving this conversation. You definitely, I'm like in this deeper place of thinking right now too, and I feel like this was like a nutritious conversation in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a deep level of thinking. Not a lot of people
I
think
know.
about
Yeah.
these kind of topics, but
We're it feels like we're building like a very organic community. And so I'm glad that the Bouge brought you in.
Yeah, me too.
Glad that the Bears brought you on board the shop.
not
But
that.
we are yeah, like literally, like, it's just it's so cool when we're like weird, authentic, star seedy, and like do all this stupid stuff and like, come out here and we just every time it's like the best people come on because you're already there,
Mhm.
It's like it's already, whatever.
Yes.
It's frustrating to like try to get people there, but it's nice when people are already there. And
That's what
you were
I
there.
always feels like what she said, nutritious conversation, because
Yeah.
there's always so much that we're filling each other up with and recharging.
Yeah.
So cool to bring us all together like this.
Yeah.
All those damn synchronicities
So,
coming
thank you.
together.
Yes.
Let's tell people who are watching the video like how they can get in contact with you, how they can check you out, because I didn't even like let's
like let them know your website and Instagram and all that.
Deets.
Yeah, I have my website is holisticsands.com. You can book sessions on there. I have an office space in Westlake that I'm using right now on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
And I do some in-home stuff because sometimes it can be really important to go to somebody to get them out of the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I've experience working with animals as well and muscle testing them. And so, yeah, holisticsands.com,
Mm-hmm.
Westlake Village, California, or, if you're in Southern California, I also do Zoom sessions as well,
Mhm.
and those are lots of fun. So yeah, you can book directly on my website.
What about socials?
Socials, Instagram at Tawni Sands.
Tawni Sands.
Yeah.
Cool.
Woo! Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the ship today, Tawni.
Thanks for welcoming me aboard.
Woo woo!
And liftoff.
Yes. Amazing. So thanks for everyone for joining us. And that is a wrap until next Friday, 12:30 on Mission Starbase, baby.
Let's do it. Thank you, folks, for tuning in, and thank you for thank you,
Thanks,
Tawni,
Tawni.
for coming on. Yes,
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
Tawni.
all.
See ya.
and everybody have a good night. Until next time.